All right, I think we're live.
Are we live? Oh, all right. Hey, that was like landing an airplane, you guys.
Ugh.
Ugh. Can you hear us now, Robbie?
You know, it's just we're always fighting uphill with the system. Yeah.
Yay.
There's DJ.
Yes, it was. It was like landing an airplane. And this was like sweating bullets because, people are waiting and you don't want to interrupt people's day for nothing. But this is really important. And like this whole cascade of stuff just came down right on top of Mike to the point I had to walk away because I feel his energy boosh right into mine. Boy, it was tense. And you missed it. I wish we had like a Patreon behind the scenes. You guys would love to be a fly on that wall.
Yeah, it's just it just kept looping and it wouldn't let me go. It wouldn't give me the option to actually start this stream.
Which I think
but
is telling.
It's very telling. Yeah, it wouldn't give you. There's a button, like you could see this button, end stream, start stream. It wouldn't come on, but it was like in limbo. So it was just bizarre. We've done probably 1,000 live streams. I don't know, at least 500 live streams. It never had these problems before.
How bizarre, how bizarre.
It's crazy, but good morning, guys.
Great to see everyone. Awaken Lightwork Soul and Robbie, Deva, Benzomatic, George, Vildon, Christine, Robbie. Everybody, hi, Jason.
Good to see you guys. So, yeah, we had some major events going on that feel a little bit foreboding, but there's things we're going to have to go through at this time, and one of the things is major earth changes. And while we don't think that all life on earth is going to be destroyed, there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. The earth is going to start to go through a period of undoing the damage that was done to her by the system that's been in place. How long? I don't know. I mean, I felt like I was pretty convinced it's going back to the Younger Dryas period. At the same time, I don't think it's been total control like they would want you to think. There's too many anomalous things out there. But what we do have is an Ethiopian volcano, Haile Gubi, that erupted. This 1,709-foot volcano, first ever eruption ever recorded today. Ash plume 6 to 9 miles high, drifting towards Yemen, Oman. And, there is a little confusion with this, too, with this volcano, because I've seen people say this is the first eruption since Atlantis fell. But when you look closely, it appears that they don't really show this one erupt. Well, in other words, they don't know exactly when it erupted last. It has not erupted in modern times. Now, the other thing with this is part of the African Rift system, and Africa is literally breaking off. And so trying to find, there we are. Okay, so that was all confused. Okay, so Africa is in the process of splitting up, and many people have talked about this. If you haven't heard before, this is very real. There's major changes going on. Look at this. This is so ominous to see. Can you imagine seeing that? Now, this volcano, again, it hasn't erupted in anybody's lifetime that's alive now, nor their grandparents, great-grandparents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At least 10,000 years, and it has not erupted in the last 10,000 years. And this is a big one. This is a big one. This is also very close to the equator. When you have big eruptions by the equator, it'll cool off the planet more than big eruptions, say, up in a place like Iceland or Alaska, or conversely down there closer to Antarctica. So the potential for cooling is definitely higher. David Devine, we were catching a little of his last one he did with Ransom, I believe the gentleman's name is, and he's talking again about food prices skyrocketing and productivity, and the fact that we're really, the dangerous thing is not really global warming, it's global cooling. We had talked about that years ago too, not by fire but by ice, and Robert Felix's work. Yeah, the reality is when the planet cools off, that hurts food production a lot more than warming.
Well, I think so. I mean, it's very difficult to throw up greenhouses to keep things from freezing to death. I mean, just in a second for that much produce that we create across the world. You can't just put greenhouses across acres and acres and acres and acres and acres.
Well, it can be done. There's this gentleman in Nebraska that we've talked about before that built a greenhouse under the ground, like 5 to 6 feet underground, uses the warming temperature of the earth itself to grow amazing citrus in Nebraska. It can be done. Where there's a will, there's a way. But we know the will on planet Earth, as far as the power structure, it's all about controlling. It's about power itself and greed, unfortunately. But it's going to change because the consciousness is changing. There is the geographic North Pole and South Pole, and then there's the magnetic North Pole and South Pole. And also, the Earth itself is not straight up and down, it's tilted. Again, we have a tilt. It ranges, like from 21.5 degrees to 23.5 degrees. And it does change. Like we were saying before, the North Pole changes as time passes. And different ages, we have different reference points. And that's part of the bigger picture. And, perhaps when we get these pole reversals, magnetic excursions, is really at the changing of the Yugas. That would make a lot of sense. And actually, that's a very, very simple and simplistic way of doing things. Think about that. The poles shift with the Yugas. The Earth gets redone in a way every single new Yuga cycle. It's kind of exciting, but yeah, it's a crazy thrill ride. We know that the Earth's magnetic pole was up in Canada. You can see this is the Hudson Bay over here. And what they're showing is just from 1970 to 2020, like 50 years' time. That's a significant move. In fact, we did do a video back in 2018. The Earth's pole shift is increasing so fast, NASA had to update all their servers and systems. And that one did get 250,000 views. That was one of the biggest ones we've ever done. It's again hard to trust all the data that comes from Never a Straight Answer, and NOAA. Yet at the same time, it is on the move, and it's always on the move. Nothing ever stays status quo. That's the thing. Things evolve. There is an evolution, but it's not necessarily Darwinian evolution. It's different. But things do evolve, and here you can see the motion of the poles. They could be rather haphazard at times. So it's been moving from Canada into Siberia. But is that going to be its final destination? No. I mean, there really never will be a final destination. It will reverse at some point. We hope we don't have a huge crustal displacement event. There are signs that there have been in the past. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be this time. But we can see the movement. Here you're looking at 1632, and then it was heading down more towards the United States, or more towards the U.S.-Canadian border. And then it changed, 1859, and then it started heading over towards Siberia, and it has been making a beeline for Siberia ever since. We also know that the scientists are in agreement that Africa is splitting apart. And literally, I don't know if they're going to call this another continent. I don't know if it'll be quite as big as Australia. I was looking at it. I don't think it's going to be as big as Australia. Will they call it a continent? Will they call it an island? I don't know. Time will tell. We'll have to see what they decide. But you can see Africa is going to get a little thinner there. And, this is just part of the big changes that are underway. There are massive changes underway. In fact, there's been many times where we've covered news articles showing these gigantic cracks They're just popping up, and the villagers will be like perplexed and obviously alarmed. This is something that's happened many, many times. You know, if you've ever not heard of the Adam and Eve story by Chan Thomas, this was a big topic a few years back, declassified, again, CIA documents. Again, this was a story written by, an author. Again, Chan Thomas. Is that the real person, or was it a pseudonym? Well, it was a little 57-page booklet. It's called The Adam and Eve Story, which was classified by the CIA at some point after its 1963 publication, and then declassified in 2013, right? So why did they classify it for like 50 years? And then let it go again? Now, because it originally wasn't classified. It was a story, but then they classified it. And then they released the sanitized version. Makes people suspicious. Did they want to make people suspicious? Because they do that. They do that. They might want you looking at something at a certain point in time in order to help manifest it. So, again, it's that part of being aware of everything going on, but at the same time not feeding the energy. But according to, this story, we go through these cycles, and Ben Davidson, Suspicious Observers, Space Weather News, did a lot of talking on this. Again, it's going to give you the idea that what's coming is something that you just can't deal with. It's going to wipe out, according to this scenario. And there's a lot of people that totally believe this and think that there's nothing we could do to escape. Maybe if you get up to 14,000 feet, you'll be able to make it before the waves, lick your backside. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I really don't think it's going to be that bad. But does that mean there won't be big tsunamis? Oh, no. I think there will be tsunamis coming. I think there's going to be great quakes coming. I do think we'll see all the big ones kind of go off, perhaps in our lifetime. Yet, is that the end of everything? No, I don't think it's the end of everything at all. So, talking about Ben Davidson's series that he did, contrast Hapgood, Charles Hapgood, again, talked about wandering pole hypothesis with the pole shift described in the CIA suppressed book by Thomas. Hapgood wrote of a pole shift of up to 40 degrees, right? 360 degrees in a circle, 180 half circle, 90, is a massive shift if you think about a 90 degree. And 40 degrees, yes, absolutely. That could cause a lot of problem. It all depends on if the crust moves and not just the magnetic poles moving. The sun, after all, changes its poles regularly. We know that. And, again, it isn't cataclysmic. The sun has an 11-year cycle, basically. So the theory is 40 degrees every 5,000 years or so in the Earth's shifting crust, where geographical poles would wander on the Earth's surface, given the idea that you have an orange, right? Now, if you were able to cut out the attaching point of the skin with the white stuff, that's attached to the core, and then it could move and shift on the inside completely, that could be absolutely cataclysmic. Every 5,000 years, that gets close to, 6,000 or so years. That would be a quarter of the precession of the equinoxes, as that occurs about every 26,000 years. So there's a lot of rational facts and stuff to be drawn from this. But the statement here is, in a quarter to a half a day, the poles move almost to the equator. All hell breaks loose. The atmosphere and the oceans don't shift with the shell. They just keep on rotating east to west, so that at the equator, the speed's 1,000 miles an hour. It has to be normally to make one rotation a day. So while the shell shifts with the poles going towards the equator, the winds in the oceans go eastward, blowing across the face of the Earth with supersonic speeds, inundating continents with water miles deep. And so that would be absolutely cataclysmic and, kind of inescapable for life. I don't think that's going to happen. I really, really don't. And everything that we've gotten from the guides is in agreement with that. There will be very, very difficult earth changes to go through. But I think this is more what we remember happening in the past.
I think a lot of this is in our DNA memory, so we instantly get really, really frightened. But no, I'm with Mike. I don't see major cataclysm to this extent happening. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't pay attention. We have a lot of little things going on, and I think mostly it's going to be about day-to-day disruption and food. I mean, a lot of it's food. So sure, there might be a lot of food on the shelves, but if you look on the back, it's just all these chemical ingredients. It's not real food. So when I say food, I mean like whole foods.
I do think, again, a lot of what the ancients were telling us was all about timing. And so we could recognize the seasons of change, the big seasons of change. Why are all these megalithic sites always aligned with certain stars? Again, they are pointing to the precession of the equinoxes. I think they're pointing us to the changing of the Yugas and the changing of the cycle. I think, honestly, they're telling us, keep your chin up, bucko. Things might be tough, but you're going to head towards better times. So we know things have happened like this on a periodic basis. There have been mass extinctions in the past. Absolutely. The poles always change, but at the same time, you have to realize too, the whole purpose of the earth and the earth being here is for life, to live on it. It's a symbiotic relationship. The earth doesn't want to wipe us all off. Now, if we are acting like a virus, that can trigger an immune system response, to manage the virus. And yes, the system has made humans act like a virus. And, again, if you are a flat earther, you're going to look at all this and you're going to just laugh and say, hey, dude, the earth's flat. Why are you worried about this? It ain't going to happen. Yet, at the same time, as above, so below, as within, so without. And I think if you want to know the shape of the earth, look under a microscope. What's the shape of of any cell? Again, it's again about looking for that microcosmic, macrocosmic perspective on things. Yet it is undeniable. The poles are moving. They are absolutely moving, and they're moving pretty rapidly. So when we see this, Urta Ale, or also known as Hali Gubi, Ethiopia there, Ethiopia is very fascinating too. The Ethiopian Christianity that's there, Ethiopian Bible, which is older than what we have in the European Western societies, very interesting as well. Different perspectives when we start taking a little more Gnostic look on things, a little bit more of an esoteric look on things. So last night in the Afar Depression, the Urta Ale shield volcano, known locally as Hali Gubi, released one of its largest eruption plumes in recent years. A towering vertical column of gas, ash, and steam. Yeah, recent years, the last 10,000 plus. What happened was there was another volcano that was releasing steam, and then that one stopped. It stopped releasing. It had actually a bubbling magma lake that was active for a very long period of time. And so this just shifted downstream and caused this to erupt. And, this is not a VEI 7 type event, which would literally cool the globe off pretty much right away. I saw estimations of somewhere around a VEI 3, perhaps a little bit stronger. Again, it's the location which can be a problem. This definitely is something to keep an eye on, because this is showing that this is a fascinating area. This is like one of the only places on Earth where you can directly observe active continental rifting. What's that? It's a continent that's breaking apart, and we're actually getting to watch it. That's kind of cool, as long as everybody stays safe. Persistent lava lake dynamics, basaltic magma circulation, mantle-driven heat transfer. Its lava lake is one of the largest and longest lived on the planet. When it pulses like this, it signals deeper changes in the Afar rift system. Now, as far as risk, yes, if you're near it, it's not good. In fact, they don't even know if there was people there that might have lost their life, as people do go to this particular volcano and get right up close and look down in on a regular basis. So, people might have lost their life on this, and certainly toxic gas exposure is an issue. Ash inhalation is another issue. Very, 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 as you see this plume, look at this. This is just a sign of the times that we are on now. This is taken from satellite, so you can see this is big.
Well, this is, the initial situation that we have is already dire, and this is going to get nothing but bigger. So that's where I'm looking at it. Wow, this could be a big problem. And if you really go into the science behind it and the science that they say is coming up, this could be, pretty problematic. And I think the best we can do is just that, the best we can do. I don't think there's any scammering to try to change much at this point, if it's going to continue to go the way it's going.
Yeah, this is absolutely a sign of the times. This volcano has no record of Holocene eruptions. That's our modern time. It has not erupted in our modern time. So if you say the last time it erupted was back in the times of Atlantis, you might be actually right. Again, was it something that signaled the end of Atlantis, and does that mean it's the end of our current cycle? I do think it is the end of our current cycle, because again, we are in a new age now. We are in the beginning of a new age. First time in recorded history. This is huge. This is a huge, huge event. At the same time, and of course they issued advisories for aircraft. This in and of itself is really pointing, I think, a little bit more towards the changes coming in Africa than necessarily global, but it is a sign of the global changes. As you see, this is how big it went. And we have a plume. It's getting up close to 50,000 feet here, but then it ended up being carried all the way over to 65,000 feet eventually. I think of the Tonga eruption that we saw. That was much bigger eruption than this, but not necessarily more significant, and certainly not for Africa in and of itself. Again, locally, the changes are going to be massive. And I do think this is a real a light going off, maybe a yellow light at this point and not a red light. You'll see these earthquake events right here at the border of Tanzania, Uganda, and the Congo. That's because this is part of that area. And again, the volcano going off here, this whole area is going to literally rift off. It's going to rift off because the plates are actually moving in opposite directions, which is really, really fascinating. It gets you thinking about the rifts that we see. For instance, the Atlantic rift, as we know, North and South America are moving away from Africa and Europe. They're moving away from these continents, and you could slide these right in together and they fit perfectly because they were once part of a supercontinent. I think again, when science gives us the breakup of the supercontinent, I think it's closer in time, not farther away than what they tell us. And I do think that the Earth is expanding. That's a big reveal too. One of the other most popular videos we ever did was talking about expanding Earth. I think that's a reality because the Earth is growing. The Earth is growing, and I liken the Earth more maybe to like an 11 or 12-year-old kid that's about to go through puberty.
Mm-hmm. I know, and I just want to make sure everyone's still able to make comments in there. I saw the comments stopped on our side, so I can't see anymore, but hopefully we got a lot of hearts. Hopefully things are going well. Okay, I guess it's still going. Here, looks fine.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for coming after we were live, I think, last night. We've been keeping busy, and, we wanted to get this in before we start to work on clients during the day. So as you see, we have this 4.6 earthquake, 10 kilometers deep, Democratic Republic of the Congo. I haven't seen a lot of earthquake activity over there. Let's see, last 30 days. No, you can see there's a few there. There's a couple over here in the Congo, and then we have some actually up in Ethiopia as well. So yeah, it's going to only get a little bit more intense as we get deeper into this period of transition, because it is a period of transition. And when you see this and you think about how big of an event the splitting of Africa is, we're literally watching history unfold, and what is it going to bring? I think we need to modify a little bit of the worst scenarios that are out there, because I think we have a tendency as a whole to always think either of the worst case scenario, or the best case scenario. It's usually going to lie somewhere in between. As you look at these ladies, are they sowing in their field? And their field has been disrupted by this huge crack in the earth.
Right. I want to say a huge thank you to Awakened Light Worker Soul. Thank you so much. Every little bit helps. Patreon, Ko-Fi. It's really difficult to be on YouTube these days. So thank you for sponsoring.
LBF 5984 said the earth is expanding because of the water. And yes, absolutely. Think about this again. We're given that, if we ask NASA, they'll tell you space is a vacuum. Oh, it's a vacuum. But at the same time, it's a vacuum, but there are bacteria and viruses out there, right? Yeah, absolutely. And people have seen things in space. Things, I just say things. Plasma entities, other forms of life do exist in space. Again, we personally believe that space is more like a little bit less dense ocean, but an ocean. What is the sun giving off? Well, it's giving, off again everything that is necessary for life. The whole purpose of the sun is to provide for, life to be abundant. And I think, again, what does the system want to do? It wants to make us think that things are in shortage, that things are tough and dire. I think, again, if it wasn't for the system, we would have an extreme amount of abundance on this planet. One watermelon, hundreds of seeds. You could create hundreds of watermelon plants. Why do they genetically modify them so that they cannot reproduce seeds again? It's because they want to make their profits on watermelons and also genetically modify things as they go. This is just what the system does. We would have an abundance, and they again are giving us distortions all the time. We are not alone. We're not even alone on the planet. Many people are starting to realize that the earth is bigger than they're telling us. There's lands here that they're not telling us about. And it may not necessarily be an ice wall beyond which those lands reside. It could be dimensional, and it could also be just simply keeping that knowledge away from us. But life abounds, and I do think that space is more like an ocean. Well, most of the life on Earth is actually in the ocean.
I mean, we really have not explored the depth of our oceans at all, not at all. And there's so much more space on Earth. There's so many things that we can do to adjust and readjust. I think it's just a matter of, some of it might be a real need to make changes, a real need to have big gardens, in the middle of communities, and everybody voluntarily comes in and they choose to help because they are hungry too. I think it might be an effort for everyone around to create a different world than the world that we've been trying to exist in, where, we're the only species that have to pay for a roof over our head, really.
Yeah, Mother Nature doesn't charge the animals of the world, the birds, the fish. She doesn't charge them tax and rent. No, they don't have to pay a mortgage. This is absolute ridiculousness that we see on planet Earth. The East African Rift System, at the confluence of 3 tectonic plates, the red dotted lines, seems to be breaking apart, right? The rifts are the oldest and widest in Ethiopia Afar region, and winds roughly south towards Tanzania and Mozambique. So you see this plate to the north, right, is going to the northeast. The Nubian plate is going to basically the west. The Somalian plate is going to the southeast. They're heading away from each other. What you have here may end up being just like what we see in the Atlantic right here. It could end up being just like this. It's going to be another boundary line. And when we look at these boundary lines, this is where the crust is the thinnest. It's the most dense and thickest when you look at a craton area. And so North America craton is basically, it's the area that is the oldest and the most dense. And so, when you're looking at that area, that is not an area where we've seen this type of activity before, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen elsewhere either. The changes are very obvious. Now, a lot of people like Gordon Michael Scallion and Stan Deyo, and then, of course, way before them, Edgar Casey, were talking about the Earth changes. This is Gordon Michael Scallion's map that he did. Now, as it turns out, with the dates that he was expecting, it's not accurate. Not yet. Will it be accurate in the future? Possibly. Again, I think we have this tendency to think things are going to happen sooner instead of later, and to magnify the intensity of events. I think it's a natural human tendency. And what do you see? You see, again, right here, this is the area we're talking about. And here's Ethiopia, here's the Sudan and stuff, and you see it. It's totally different. Completely different. In fact, it's starting to look more like what we see in Indonesia, than what we currently see in Africa. And when you look to Indonesia here, now we also know for a fact there was another continent right here. It was called Zealandia. So all these islands, at one point in time, you could have walked from the southern island of New Zealand all the way up into Indonesia. Yeah, again, the Earth has had sudden change. The ocean level has risen 400 feet or so since the last full ice age, since the Younger Dryas event. So, yeah, while these maps haven't manifested yet, they could, but it may be a lot longer than what people think. And it might not be as severe. Again, this is, Gordon Michael Scallion's map. Because when you look at this is pretty extreme. There's barely anything left of Europe in his map. And again, much of northern Canada is gone. And yet you have new land in the Atlantic, new land in the Pacific. Those things have been prophesized. And you also have more land down around Antarctica here. Yes. Will it look like this in our lifetimes? I don't think so. But at the same time, I really do think our lifetimes can expand tremendously. I think that if you are 60 right now, I wouldn't be surprised if you make it to 120 or 150. If you can make it through the next 5 to 10 years. Because the next 5 to 10 years are when the system falls apart and things start to really change over. I think we can live much longer, healthier lives. In fact, again, when we look to the Yugas in the Hindu tradition and also in the old Greek age tradition, when we're looking at the different ages in Greece, when you get to the age that we're in now, beings could live up to 1,000 years, a 4-digit lifespan. Is that real? Yeah, I do think so. I think when they're talking about the Sumerian kings list too, they might also be talking about beings that are not Homo sapiens sapiens, but ruling for tens of thousands of years. I do think, yeah, that was something that did happen.
I think there's a lot more that we can do too. If you look at reptiles and other creatures, if they lose a leg a limb, they can grow it back. It's so wild. I don't think we are void of that. I think it's just been, it's been shoved down. It's been forgotten. But there is something there in our DNA. When our DNA is fresh and clean and pure, I think we can regenerate ourselves and live so long, long lives.
So John Hernandez asking for healing, was in the hospital with heart issues. And so we're sending positive healing energy, light, and love. May your body find balance and stability and abundant health. And we all are sending our positive energies and intent your way.
Indeed, John, hang in there, and we'll keep you in our hearts.
Now, there have been so many people that have put out these maps based on a lot of the prophecies given by people like Edgar Cayce. In this particular one, Safe Zones map of the USA, you can see pretty much Louisiana's toast, according to this, and a good half of Arkansas as well. Edgar Cayce did say that the Gulf of Mexico and the Great Lakes would join together. But a lot of his predictions that he gave for even now, like 30, 40, 50 years ago, have not come true yet. I think, again, shifting timelines. Here you see that the Pacific Ocean is supposed to be close to Denver. Wow, that would be major, major changes. As you can see, a big chunk of Oregon and Washington, most of California and Nevada, and some of Utah and Arizona supposed to be underwater. We don't get that anything that extreme is going to happen in our lifetimes. Again, everything is subject to change because there are so many different wills and intentions in play.
Sometimes I don't think people understand how powerful their words are, and they might say a whole bunch of really mean things, and with those mean words, you can do a lot of harm. So I think it is in our minds and in our voice, and if we speak it and think it, it does become a thing. Thoughts are things, and this is how we manifest.
Well, according to the Hopi Nation's prophecies, they're going to be a safe zone in the time to come. And we were living right on the edge of the Hopi Nation, actually in Navajo and Zuni territory on reservation for a while. And it did feel very safe there. We had a lot of interesting encounters with things and a lot of sightings of strange things in the sky. But here again, you're looking at this, envisioning a lot of Louisiana, some of Arkansas underwater, East Texas underwater, Florida underwater. This is Standeo, and this was done in 2012. And obviously it hasn't come to pass. Most of the West Coast is gone according to this. I don't think it's going to be that extreme. Is this what the world might look like in 1,000 years? Maybe. I think some of the changes, while they can occur very, very quickly, as you know or may not know, most of the maps prior to 1700 show California as an island. And after 1700, coincidentally, that's when the Great Cascadian Quake came and wiped away many Native American villages. Then it's seen as part of the North American continent. But before that, it was an island off the coast and literally had a queen. Her name was Califia. California, Queen Califia. Do you think that's where it came from?
I don't know. It sounds pretty much the same.
It does, because again, the system steals what is real, twist and distort, and then use it to sell the system. This is, again, talking about the Earth after the pole shift based on Edgar Cayce's prophecies. As you see, he did say Northern Europe would be changed in the twinkling of an eye. There's a lot of areas that may be safer than others. This is the U.S. Navy map. Supposedly, the U.S. Navy had inside info. Again, they have remote viewers. They do that all the time. All the world's governments have remote viewers, all the major ones. Pretty consistent with thinking that the Mississippi River is going to become like a gulf, and also having a lot of issues on the U.S. West Coast. Nevada is 85 to 90% owned by the United States government. Same thing with Wyoming as well. The biggest, perhaps the most important military outpost in the United States is in Nevada. Do you think they would have that there in a zone that they weren't feeling secure about? No, I don't think they would. I think, again, they've done enough remote viewing to see that. So, there's a lot of consistency, in some of these maps. And again, I think many people are pulling from Edgar Cayce when you get down to it. As you see this one again, Mississippi River, 50 miles wide, literally cutting the United States in half. Wouldn't that be kind of poetic justice in some ways? With the big divide, the divide in the United States geopolitically, shoot. While it wouldn't be good if you're in any of those zones, by the way, we're in one of those zones. And by the way, I've also seen us on the road at some point in the future. Yet we are here right now, and we're riding out the storm for now until we get direction from the guides to move. When I was trying to pin them down on the safest spot, and I was asking all sorts of questions when Cindy was under and channeling, consistently I got that yes, the Four Corners area is very good, but you have to realize they've fracked the crap out of it. There's a lot of toxic water in that area as well. There's so much oil drilling, and again, they use very, very toxic chemicals in that. Yet, what the guides consistently said when we asked, well, what is the best place? They would only say towards the middle. Towards the middle is what we got. As far as if you are living in the United States, towards the middle. So that could also, include like the Dakotas. It could include Nebraska and Kansas as well. I think you have to listen to your own guides and what's right for you, because your higher self has a big purpose in mind for this life, as this is a very important incarnation.
It is. And, wherever you're at right now is probably where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, again, root and ground. And when you get the info, you'll get the info. And maybe it'll be just stay put and be an anchor for the light where you are. So there is the line of thinking, and there's been various different guesses on where the new North and South Pole would be. And some have said, somewhere towards Southeast Asia, somewhere towards South America. So if you took this and you shifted it, you would end up with a completely different world. And in fact, if the equator ended up, running between the Americas and Africa and Europe, that would end up putting Antarctica right there pretty much on the equator too, which would really at some point uncover a lot of stuff, wouldn't it? That would be really, really fascinating. We're going to have to see what develops. Absolutely. So this is what I was talking about. A lot of people have made mention also of Zeta talk and the Zetas. Again, you have to feel into the sources. There can be sources that are not so benevolent that can give you 90% accurate information, but they have something in mind. Again, a lot of these forces are really, really self-serving when you get down to it. So, will the new equator look something like this? Well, only time will tell, but that would certainly change everything in the world, would it not?
Oh, I think it would.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are fascinating times, fascinating subjects. These are some accuracies from Zeta Talk, which goes way back into the 90s. I remember them being a very hot topic. And of course, they talk a lot about the 12th planet. They talk a lot about Nibiru causing these things. Nibiru did cause a lot of problem, and it did, because it did venture in close to us. And it did cause a lot of cataclysm, and the beings from Nibiru are actually the ones that put the moon in its place. There are many societies out there that recognize a time before the moon. And even calling out that it's two brothers that are always fighting amongst themselves that have a reptilian nature. They're the ones that put it in place. But what we've gotten from the galactics is that Nibiru will not be allowed to get any closer than it is now, which is outside of the orbit of Neptune and Uranus. As you know, the ultimate power in the universe is not the Nibiruans. It's not even the Draco.
No, it's you.
Yeah, and source is in you. That's the thing. So celebrate and have a good time and enjoy the snow when it's snowing, and enjoy, you know, the rain when it's raining, and when it's a beautiful warm day and blue skies are out there and there's no chemtrails. Enjoy that too. You too can be the happiest sheep on earth, but not a sheeple. No, not a sheeple. It's the difference between being a happy sheep and a sheeple that doesn't understand that he's being herded, he or she.
That's the cutest thing. I love it.
Thank you guys so much for all your support. Thank you guys for showing up and putting up with all the YouTube shenanigans going on with the technology that seems to be glitching more than ever. Instead of getting better and more, more that you can count on it, no, it seems to be less count-onable than ever. But maybe that's because the system is cracking. The system is falling apart, and it is in its last days because we're in a new Yuga, guys, and anything can happen. Sky's the limit.
And hang on for a tune. Get your minds in a happy spot. Here we go. Thanks so much, you guys. Source bless and namaste.
Much love, guys. Thank you so much for your support.